The earliest conversation I had about Rogue Nation was with Tom when we were making Edge of Tomorrow. We were working on the script for that movie one night, and we'd had a very long discussion about story. And Tom said, you should direct the next Mission Impossible.
Chris and I have the same sensibility in storytelling and the same love of films and the same kind of movies. He was an untitled writer of Ghost Protocol. And, you know, he and I spent a lot of time discussing this franchise, and he knows it inside and out.
Just set, let's shoot and go.
Well, my original vision for the film was to take all four of the films that came before it and lay them on top of one another and look for the holes.
It really is you. I've heard stories. They can't all be true.
With each film, I always walk away and it's like, okay, what did I learn? What can I do better? And McHugh's very much like that.
Earliest idea from the story is that we didn't want to have an internal rift in the IMF. It felt as though several of the movies had done that, and we didn't want to do that again.
I'm afraid today is the day when the IMF's luck runs out. Story
is king, and every shot has to forward that story and that narrative. So for me, always, it's what I love about movies. I love a good story.
The evolution of the story and the characters ran on sort of parallel tracks. Ilsa started out with a different name and a different agenda. She was a very different character at the beginning.
We're after the same thing, and I can help you. If you want to bring down the syndicate, you have to let me out.
With the mission and storytelling, there are certain things that you can get away with and a leap that you can make structurally with storytelling that the audience wants.
I'm not interested in playing games, Brad.
And I'm not interested in seeing my friends get killed either. So if I'm going to betray them, we're going to do this on my terms.
The story itself was completely malleable. What we decided to do early on was we embraced this was an action film and it involved very big action set pieces. So we started there. We started by creating the set pieces and rearranging them, saying, well, okay, we have this set piece. Is it better in the first act of the movie? Is it better in the last act of the movie?
In a musical, the two characters are in love, or the two characters are, they're separated, and the drama seems very, it's very simple, but it allows that. And there's a progression of story with each number when it's done really well. I feel the same way with action sequences, and I'll sit down with the stunt guys and I'll tell them, we'll go through it, and Chris and I'll go through and say, this is the introduction of our character, and within this sequence, here's what I want the audience to feel. What's the story here? With every shot, every sequence, we want that kind of progression.
We learned a lot on Jack Reacher about what it took to make a really effective car chase. And so Tom and I came up with this sequence that evolved from a car to a motorcycle. Then we let the trajectory of those action sequences determine what the characters' motivations were. And those motivations then started to give shape to the story.
Once you have that kind of suspense, it allows for character comedy and character drama. What Chris is also brilliant at is writing for the actor. So with each person that's coming in, we're going to look at and adjust the character to them.
Get him ready, please.
So I wrote scenes that I thought were interesting emotionally as a way to give actors things to work with. And it was only when I started to watch actors read the scenes that I started to discover who Ilsa might be.
Precious few people know about your true identity. It would be unfortunate if we forgot.
Everything that came into the story came organically from the fact that we had this very inorganic beginning. We just put the action scenes in a certain order and then watched the characters grow around it. Everything that we were doing was trying to create a confrontation whereby Ethan killed Solomon. And no matter how we did it, it didn't feel right. It always felt empty, it felt unearned. And there was a moment where I turned to Tom and said, I don't think we can kill this guy. And Tom thought for 1 minute about it, and he said, you're absolutely right, we can't. And so it went from Ethan hunting for the villain to Ethan drawing the villain into a trap.
We're constantly rewriting and working. You don't know what's going to happen next.
The movie is shifting around us all the time.
Face to face. Just as you wished, Ethan.
Just when you think you've got it figured out, that's what a mission movie's like. I love making movies. There's such a unique intensity and joy of so many people coming together. Mission Impossible is the first film that I ever produced. And to be here after all these years, it's a wonderful thing.
Tom as a producer is the best partner you could possibly hope to have. I mean, he understands the Mission Impossible franchise inside and out, obviously, having worked on it for 20 years. He's a 24-hour-a-day movie-making machine. Loves making movies, loves being part of the process. There's no place he'd really rather be.
From our budget to our schedule to the physical needs of the movie, he's involved with it in every way. Always positively, always driving us forward, always keeping in mind the big picture of what the movie needs and making sure that everything we do shows up on screen.
I make my movies for audiences. That's why I do it. They're always there for me. One of the things that I really push for early on is getting the studios to send me to Europe and send me to Asia and all around the world so that I can see, do I understand that audience? Are they reacting the same way? Do they have the same kind of response?
Tom is always thinking about audience expectations of a movie, of a scene, of a sequence, and what would they like to see in the moment.
Some people, they want the action, so we give them, the action is there, or they want the intrigue, or they want the journey of traveling to different places. So Mission has all of those elements. It has the twists and turns, so it's not just action, it's got story.
A very famous movie actor once said to me, when you take ultimate responsibility for what's on screen and become a real producer, you can't afford to complain anymore about what's being done and what's not being done. And Tom has taken that responsibility.
Mission Impossible 3 was the first movie that I directed, and it was because Tom gave me the shot. And I didn't know what I was getting into, and people warned me, oh, the movie star is the producer. That could be a real problem. It could not have been less of a problem. Tom was as aware of the process of making the movie, of what it needed, as anyone I could have imagined. Every day I felt that he and I were in the trenches together in this incredible way where we were both sort of pulling each other up this mountain. And he wasn't a movie star looking to do a vanity project. He was an incredibly focused, dedicated producer who also happened to be starring in the movie.
You want to feel emotion. The process for Tom and I tends to be one where it's totally chaotic, and yet we're the calm in the center of that story.
Yeah, do you think it's funny enough? It's great.
Tom comes to the process from a very emotional point of view, and I come to the process from a very analytical and very ordered point of view. We check each other very well. Tom will say, this is what I want the audience to feel in a scene. How would you best bring that feeling to the screen?
Whoa. Are you okay to drive? I mean, a minute ago you were dead. What are you talking about? This is not going to end well.
Tom is everywhere at all times. Not only is he being an actor and having to remember his lines, but his head is in every other facet of the production.
There's the actor to support the director and support the cast and all the departments.
How's that frame for you at the end?
Working on films with Tom is really the best film education I've ever had. He's able to not only be in these movies, but produce these movies and make them his own.
It's amazing to watch him kind of spot little bits and pieces around that he wants to change or thinks this should be this way, and
then the bike goes.
It's an incredible position of control to be in. It means that you have complete dominion over your sort of art form, which is great.
Get in! Go. What the? She tried to shoot me!
It doesn't make her a bad person. Who is he?
We're after the same thing, and I can help you. I knew, of course, that this was sort of Tom's whole franchise. I mean, he produces it, he helps edit it, he's always on set, even when he's not even shooting a scene. He's acting. I don't know how he does it.
I like the shot. Let me practice and now it's shooting.
Tom is not only performing, but he's aware where we're going to cut, what continuity he has to bring, and you see him physically moving back and forth within a scene, calculating in his mind where the cut points are.
Now my question is, editorially, do you need a long look back?
He works incredibly hard and he cares passionately about giving the audience a great experience at the movies. And Tom will review every scene in the film and will throw up ideas and will bounce ideas around. He lives and breathes filmmaking and storytelling, and he's incredibly passionate about making sure that the audience have a great time when they buy their movie ticket and go to a theater to watch the film.
This is better. That's a cool.
He has a really firm grasp on what it is that makes mission films specifically mission, and not Bond and not Bourne and not something else.
With any movie, we're taking that audience and there's a trust that I feel, and I want to hold them in the same way that I want to be on the edge of my seat when I'm watching a movie. I want to deliver that for an audience, and that is storytelling.
Watching Tom produce this film is a experience that is about not settling and pushing yourself and everyone around you to do the best job you can do and to make a film that will surpass everything you've done before. And if we do our job right, it will entertain millions of people.
We always want to make it better, and you know there's never perfection. In storytelling in movies, you're constantly reaching for it. I'm just happy that audiences find these films entertaining as I do, and I really enjoy making them.
Do you have your seatbelt on? Are you asking me that now?
This movie is about friendship. It is about a team, and it's the complications of friendship that happen when enormous pressure comes down on these guys.
Put down the phone. Let's think about this. We have a responsibility to warn the British government and not gamble with the Prime Minister's life, Ethan, just so you can beat the guy that has beaten you at every turn.
The journey of the characters is dictated by a note that Tom gave me very early on. He said, I want the team to be experiencing what you and I experience when we're making a movie. We look at each other as two people who are in the trenches and sort of fighting our way out, or shooting our way out, as the case may be. And so Tom wanted to take that sense of camaraderie and that sense of chaos.
The plane!
Yes, the package is on the plane, we get it!
And translate it into Mission Impossible.
Can you open the door?
That's very much what you're feeling when you're watching the team.
Benji, can you open the door?
Can I open the door? Maybe.
Open the door when I tell you!
Well, at the end of Ghost Protocol, it felt like a new beginning for the IMF. You know, the guys managed to save the world, literally, and we all went off on our various missions. Here, with this one, it seems things have changed rapidly, and the IMF has sort of become obsolete in a way. It's been severely questioned by the CIA, and Ethan's out there on his own on this crusade, seemingly obsessed.
You know, he's evolved, Ethan. He is not necessarily fearless. You know, he's not a superhero. He's very human, but will go to any extent to help others and save his friends and to try to save the world. He loves his team. You know, he loves and enjoys what he does.
I've always thought Benji is kind of Ethan's biggest fan. Ethan knew him as the guy he could take his broken computers to.
It's great work, Benji.
Then he knew him as a fellow agent.
This is very exciting.
And now they've been through some stuff together. They have a little camaraderie and genuine peril that they've experienced together. And so it's interesting to see that Benji has apparently rejected him at the beginning of the movie.
Ethan Hunt is still out there in the field, and I am stuck here answering for it. We are not friends.
Benji finds himself working for the CIA, but in the most mundane, boring job he could possibly have.
He misses the field, and the draw of his old friend brings him back into action.
The opera sequence was a sequence that was forcing Ethan and Benji together and really making Benji a conspirator in Ethan's unsanctioned operation.
Benji's been out in the field for a while now, so he's a little bit more mature, he's a little bit more experienced, but he's no less Benji. You know, Benji's always has this sort of wild, wide-eyed kind of appreciation of what he does and the world he moves around in.
What the? She tried to shoot me! Doesn't make her a bad person.
I'm playing Ilsa Faust. She's a undercover agent. I would say that she is sort of a feminine version of Ethan Hunt. He meets his match.
We knew we wanted to bring a woman into the story who was not a member of the team, but was somehow more of a foil to Ethan than somebody who was subordinate to him. And I was less interested in a romantic relationship than I was in a relationship between two equals.
We've never met before, right?
Follow me. What I love about Ilsa is that she has a kick-ass, mean, badass side and a vulnerability that we are trying to sort of entwine.
Her character is mysterious and delightful and powerful. Ethan very much believes in her.
We've all talked about what kind of a fighting Ilsa Faust would do, and we've found this sort of robust, raw, animalistic, tough attitude, which is so cool because she just kicks ass like any other man you'd see. There's elegant kicks, but combined with some very, very raw, brutal action.
I think that Rebecca Ferguson actually gets to play a role that's worthy of her. She's not being used as sort of eye candy or the damsel in distress or the prize. She's an incredibly strong character, and it's great to see in a world where often the spy genre action movie where men get most of the great moments. I think that she gets as many great moments as any man in the movie.
Trust me or kill me. But if you're gonna kill me, be a man. Do it yourself.
A decision I made very early on was to split the team in half and have it be Ethan and Benji on one track and Luther and Brant on another track chasing after them. Brant being the person who had to find Ethan in order to save his life.
They're going to kill Ethan. They're going to kill Benji. We have to get to them first. Are you going to help me?
And Luther being the only person with the technical knowledge to find Ethan.
Find her, find Ethan.
Tell me it's possible to pull facial recognition off a sketch.
For mere mortals, no. For me, I could have done this at home.
I liked the sort of odd couple nature of it. And what I especially liked is that Ving is the earliest team member from the franchise and that Jeremy is the latest. And the idea of pairing the two of them together and realizing that they've really only met on screen for the briefest of moments at the end of Ghost Protocol.
This must be them.
Luther Stickle, the firm of Carter, Dunn and Brant.
So I thought I would exploit that dynamic and play them as two characters who really don't know each other all that well and in fact don't trust each other.
Ethan is my friend. And if I have 1 second of doubt whose side you're on,
Ving just fits on Luther like a glove, you know? He's the elder statesman of the group. He's known Ethan the longest, and Ving's known Tom the longest. They bring a relationship and an intimacy and a warmth that completely transfers onto screen.
Ving is amazing. I love him in this character. You see that dynamic that he has with Renner in this one. Renner was an analyst and kind of on the fringes of being in the field.
Jeremy is sort of this live wire counterpoint to the other characters, and it's fun to watch when they get together.
It's a high-speed chase. You just had to get the 4x4, didn't you?
Hey, look, don't blame me. You chose
You
this
just
car.
had to have it.
You want me to drive? You want me to drive?
I like that the guy I'm up against is tough. He can be charming and he can throw it off in a certain way, but he's also very tough guy.
I'm not interested in playing games, Brad.
And I'm not interested in seeing my friends get killed either. So if I'm going to betray them, we're going to do this on my terms and my terms only. Do you understand?
My favorite films, and the films I gravitate to, are those with really strong characters where I'm really kind of emotionally invested. And that's obviously our approach every time we do a project. If we make our audience care about the characters, we are able to hopefully make a film that resonates beyond the action that's happening on screen.
It's always been a character-based franchise. You care about Ethan Hunt. You care about the team around him.
That kind of chemistry that McHugh and I wanted with those characters is very alive. It's fun to watch. You know, you just see that team fray and almost fracture.
I lost it.
You think it's going to split apart and the whole story is going to blow up.
You set us up, Ethan.
No, She delivered a message.
She set us up!
And that's a mission movie, just constant pressure down on these characters and how can they overcome it? And will they work together as a team? Will they figure it out?
We knew we needed some sort of a stunt, some sort of a spectacle. It's become a rite of passage for a Mission Impossible film. We had a big legacy to live up to. Jim Bissell, the production designer, came to me with this model of this plane, said, what would you do with this? And I turned to Tom and I said, half joking, what if you were on the outside of that thing when it took off?
You know, you think about stuff like that as a kid. What would it be like out on that wing? When McHugh said, look, what about hanging off the side of an A400? I said, all right, yeah, let's do it. Let's do this.
The biggest challenge was once you dream it up, somebody had to actually say, yes, you could do it.
All the health and safety aspects that come into play, you know, you can't hang a multi-million-dollar star on the outside of an airplane and fly around.
It became this question of how do you not just get the insurance, which I still don't know how he does that, but how much do you want to really risk the life of this person? Because it's very easy for all of us, you know, who are wearing sweaters, to say, okay, Tom Cruise is going to go hold on to the side of an airplane when it takes off. And it's nothing to be the person who's doing it.
Tom really wanted to be on the outside of that plane, flying at altitude and hanging on. He really did.
Airbus did not know for certain that the plane could structurally deal with what we were considering.
We basically looked at you like you were crazy, to be honest.
So we had to convince them. So from my side, it was a lot of drawings and engineering and a lot of talks and letting them trust me.
15 seconds to be in our key spot.
You know, once we had their trust, they were so helpful. It was brilliant.
I remember I couldn't sleep the night before. And I was thinking, okay, kind of just going through my mind, did we check everything out? We wanted that shot where, as it's on its climb, you see the Earth move away from you at a very high speed. So his angle of attack had to be very steep.
There was an incredibly precise margin of error in the throttle. The plane had to be going fast enough to stay airborne, but it couldn't be going so fast that Tom simply would be torn off regardless of what safety measures we had.
We had scleral lenses fitted for my eyes. I tested those because we were also worried, as the wind is blowing, if it could fold the lens over on itself, which would have been very uncomfortable and not so safe.
The risk of any debris that was on the airfield.
Any particle that could hit me, even a small little rock.
If it was sucked into the propeller and hit Tom, it would be traveling at the speed of a bullet.
If that goes into my eye, it's going to go through my eye.
And there was nothing to protect his face. It was going to be shot in the wintertime. It was incredibly cold where we were, and Tom was going to be wearing a suit under which he could not be wearing any sort of real substantial thermal protection.
Then we're also concerned about bird strikes.
As he came in, he hit an owl. He hit it so hard, you can actually see the feathers.
We simply could not control the variable of birds flying in the path of that airplane. And if a bird hit Tom at that speed on any part of his body, that would have been the end.
If I see a bird, I'm going to press up against the side of the airplane. And I never mentioned it to anyone, but I'm a pilot, so I knew what the exhaust was going to be like. You know, everyone's looking at all these kind of problems, but I thought this also could be a problem in terms of extended amount of time back there could be poisonous. I felt very confident with the team, with the pilot, and I feel very confident with Wade and everything.
That was a very ballsy thing for Tom to do. You know, to take off and rely on our rigging to hold a little bit of wire that said it should be rated for X amount.
If we start taking off, we're taxiing, you guys can leave me in my slack mode?
Like any stunt, anything could go wrong. I had one cord here, say that breaks. You know, those are the things you think about. If something went wrong, they can't pull me into the airplane. That's it. And then came the day. I was like, okay, this is, you know, this is really gonna happen. When you're doing any kind of thing, we have different levels of joking with one another to keep things calm and focused. When we're going through something like that, I just keep thinking about an audience, and I think about the shots, the storytelling, and you also want to focus in on performance. The engine started.
The plane was on the runway, and I was looking at Tom through the camera, and I realized there was something I wanted him to do. I had to get out of the plane to go direct Tom. In order to do that, I had to walk behind the engines. It was very cold, and suddenly it became intensely hot.
It's just the fuel was just
this absolutely stifling wave of exhaust. You couldn't inhale. It was so foul. And then you walk between the engines and it was freezing cold again. And then walk behind the next engine and it was hot again. And passed through that heat barrier and there was Tom. And he's clinging to the side of this metal plane with his bare hands. He had hearing protection in.
I couldn't see when I had the lenses in. They protected my eyes, but it cost me my eyesight.
I was basically directing through pantomime. I finished giving him some direction, and he said to me,
"Don't worry about me." I said, "If I look terrified,
if it looks like I'm panicking,
it's performance. I'm just acting.
I'm acting.
Don't break the shot, you know, I'll tell you when to break the shot.
Just keep going."
Because I also know everyone kind of, you know, they have their own quiet panic about it, and you want to calm people down.
I said, okay. And I walked back behind the engines and back in front of the engines and got on the plane and sat down and realized we have no idea what's really going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen next. And with that, the plane took off.
I give it the thumbs up to camera. They're inside the airplane, and I'm telling him, you know, let's go, let's go, let's go. He's pushing that throttle forward, and we are hammering down that runway, and I'm like, holy shit. The force of it, I mean, I was just trying to keep my feet on the ground, because I always had in my mind the image of when the airplane took off, my feet are gonna come off. I'm hanging on the side of this, and the force of that wind, I mean, you see, I'm trying desperately to keep my feet on the flooring there. And that feeling, man, the airplane left the ground, and I couldn't hold my feet on the side on that airplane anymore. And suddenly I do feel that force of my body's going up against the side of that fuselage. I'm thinking timing, because how high are we above the ground? Now do I say my line? You know, they want the line at a particular time where lighting's good, am I in shadow? So all of these other things are really occupying my mind.
I'm just on board for a ride and a look around. Tom's just hanging off for shits and giggles.
It's an extraordinary shot to see him out there on the outside of that airplane. And he was having fun, too.
I'm scared shitless. We landed. It was like, good, I got that out of my system. You know, it's always the first one. It's like, all right, everyone feels a little calmer. You know, everything's fine.
It was kind of, is he still alive? Was what I was thinking. And I kind of thought that was a one take, and he was going to do it once and then walk away.
I just said to the camera, I went like this, and I said, let's go again, I'm ready.
He did it 8 times.
Every time it was like, holy shit.
Seems like he enjoyed it.
Were my feet, did they come off?
Every time they were like, let's stop it, but I wanted to make sure that we had that shot.
It's like bird topping, isn't it?
It was kind of mind-blowing and ridiculous. I don't know what he's going to do next. Go into space, probably.
I mean, it's a combination of elation that we've actually achieved it and relief that nothing went wrong.
I can still taste the fuel.
That was a great sequence, and it went absolutely flawlessly.
Well, that's really awesome. Brilliant.
There was a point where we didn't believe that any of this was feasibly possible. That was pretty amazing, watching him do that and watching him smile while he was doing it. He was just having the time of his life.
You'll have 3 minutes. 2.5 minutes to switch the security profile. 30 seconds to escape through the service hatch.
Remember, conserve oxygen. Don't move a muscle if you don't have to.
I've done a lot of underwater work, and Chris and I were on Edge of Tomorrow. We were shooting the underwater sequence, and already at that time, Chris and I were talking about Mission. And I said, you know, I've never done an extended underwater sequence. How can we make a really long sequence for an audience and have them experience what it's like holding your breath for that period of time?
When Jim Bissell presented us with the Taurus, the set filled with water, Tom reacted to that and said, that's great. We can do something really exciting with this environment.
I just came up with this idea that it could be really interesting. If we put him in a sort of a wash tub, and then there's these robotic arms that are going around that interfere with it.
Imagine Mission Impossible 1, where Ethan is hanging by a thread. Now remove the thread and don't allow him to breathe.
You know, we're always trying to create something that hasn't been done before, which is very difficult. So looking for those little unique moments that create that difference.
No oxygen tanks.
Most of the work that's done in the film is done in camera and is practical, but there was literally no way for us to shoot that sequence in a real environment. And so we animated the entire sequence. It's called a previs.
We used the previs to help understand the sections that we can film Tom underwater in.
It was an incredibly complex process of designing these shots and figuring out how to film them so that the audience is holding their breath and they feel intensely claustrophobic in that scene.
Underwater photography is extraordinarily difficult and time-consuming. It's dangerous, it's slow, it's very exhausting.
You move differently, you act differently, don't breathe.
We realized very quickly that Tom was going to have to be holding his breath for a very long time. Further compounding that was he would be moving. So we baked that into the sequence. We made that the central threat, that physical activity underwater equals death.
Having had the chance to read the script, look at the pre-vids, I knew that I had in front of me one of the most complex, if not the most complex underwater sequence I've ever been involved with in my career.
So I have to hold my breath for 3 minutes. You could do that.
Well, the thing you're overlooking is the physical exertion. The more you exert yourself, the faster you consume oxygen.
Tom invited me to be trained by Kirk Kroc, who is a deep dive instructor, which has been incredible.
Normally, in underwater sequences, people hold their breath for 10 seconds, 15 seconds max. So I had to prove to everyone that it was actually safe and spend time with the safety guys and the safety officers to show them, look, not only is it safe, it's better that I know how to hold my breath because I'm going to be very relaxed. No one's going to have to rush in, no one has to panic.
Basically, what I'm doing is taking Tom and Rebecca through a breath hold special operations program. It's a program that I've designed for militaries. And what we're really trying to do is we're developing their ability to hold their breath under extreme conditions.
You have to overtrain for a sequence. We are doing up to 6.5-minute breath holds.
We started breath hold.
Tom's very comfortable underwater and he likes to challenge the crew by staying under longer than he should on a breath hold and get us all worried.
Let's not freak people out too much. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 3. Tom and Rebecca as students were amazing. It was a pretty great experience to see them actually grow and get better all the time.
We just keep a really calm manner on the set and we make it like this sort of Zen state which keeps everyone calm and all their heart rates down so we can go for the longest possible take.
That gave us an incredible amount of control. I could put Tom underwater and I could point the camera at him for 3 minutes and shoot very long pieces and be directing him without having to stop every time.
It makes our life easier with the safety divers looking after them. They don't have to worry about them so much within their breath holds because they know that their comfort level is high.
It was scary and impressive just as a bystander because he might have done a 1.5 minute long take, but what you really had to appreciate is that he has to hold his breath, wait for everyone to get into position, wait for all the bubbles to clear, wait for the cameras to roll. Then he does a long take. And then he has to wait for the divers to come back and give him air.
Tom is very good in the water, so he makes my job a lot easier. I think Rebecca was more of a neophyte to this, but she embraced it wholeheartedly, and she is a trooper. She did take after take, no complaining.
You got that? Rebecca stripping, getting into the water.
I am underwater strapped onto things, and for some reason, I actually don't question it, I just do it. When Tom does something, I can do it. That's my motivation.
It's a very, very kind of claustrophobic, tense feeling you get when you realize they're trapped in this completely contained unit underwater. There's no way out.
It's not only actually life-threatening, but it's exhausting. And he's doing it simply because he loves the idea that when this is eventually put into the movie, the audience will be holding their breath because he's holding his.
There's no way that we ever could have pulled off that sequence without Rebecca and Tom having done the training and made that physical commitment.
I have to say, it was really fascinating. I learned a lot about my body and how it works. And it was surprisingly challenging, more challenging than I ever anticipated.
Thank you. It took everybody
every single person here to really get this right. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
The chase had evolved from the work that Tom and I did on Jack Reacher. We learned a lot shooting that car chase and wanted to take it to the next level. And of course, the next level for Tom was to do it on a motorcycle and to find a way to shoot Tom riding without a helmet at incredibly high speed. That proved an incredible technical challenge.
How do you get interesting camera angles? How do you film this in a way that hasn't been filmed before? So the stunt guys and the SFX guys came up with a number of rigs.
We had to build cameras that would allow you to be where you were on those motorcycles throughout the entire thing.
To do the work we want to do safely with Tom and the other stunt riders, we remove a certain amount of the traffic from the road to give them safe passage. In post, what we can do is add back in digital cars. So rather than Tom weaving through two cars that are spread 50 meters apart from each other, it really looks like he's weaving through really tight packed action.
Trying to shoot at actual speed and not pretend, so it creates quite a bit of choreography with the cars and making sure everybody's in the right place at the right time. If there's anybody not, it can be disastrous.
We had dangerous roads with 2,000-foot drops. If you go off there, you're dead.
We also knew that we wanted a car chase component, and we had the idea of using a car as a weapon.
I had a little meeting with Tom before the film, and I said, you know, because of the nature of the work we have on this, we have to take you back to basics, and I'd like to re-teach you so that the end result you come out 100% better than you ever were. He really embraced that. Every week we did a different track around Britain, and we went and trained him with drifting and all the driving stuff in the cars, and I mean, he really went to another level.
I have to say, the way Wade set the car up and set the motorcycle up and the kind of training that we did, it was able to just take it to a whole new level so that we could do very extreme things with relative safety.
We've got lots of action interspersed with various beats of comedy, with Luther and Brandt driving their 4x4, with Benji kind of reacting in increasing horror as he realizes that Ethan really hasn't got the faculties to drive the car safely.
It is funny, there's no way you can not laugh at these guys bouncing around like Muppets in the car, banging their heads, and so we've had fun with that, with the horn beeping every time they bang their head on the hook, and it just makes that whole scene, it lightens what is, you know, a fairly hefty car chase.
In order for us to shoot that sequence on the Rabat steps, we first had to cover the steps with special ramps that we had to go in and install and then remove digitally. Otherwise, we would have lost a BMW every time we went down those stairs. And then, of course, we had all those bikes going down the stairs as well, and we needed expert motorcycle riders.
I feel fortunate because I get to work with the best drivers, the best stunt guys, these incredible athletes.
So we had the two bikers ride down, free riding, with Tom doing the slide himself. We've made the special wall over here is all foam, and then the wall itself actually hinges. The whole wall's on a hinge system, so it's got give that it moves, and if he actually does get stuck against it, it's got some movement as well.
What was incredible was watching how trusting Simon was of Tom.
I don't get frightened as such, as terrified. No, Tom's such a good driver. He's a very accomplished driver. He's trained hard for this as well.
He totally trusted me when we were doing it, which I was like, I was thinking I don't want to tell him how dangerous this really is. I mean, I'm driving high speed, drifting, slamming up against the wall, and at times we have cameras hanging off of it.
Anytime that you're looking at Tom through the windshield of that car, you're looking at Tom through one of 3 cameras that were attached to the vehicle. That meant Tom's visibility was like that. He was looking in between 2 cameras with another camera pointed at him. On top of that, the weight of the vehicle is completely different with that huge camera mount on the front. Making that even more complicated, we were on active city streets over which we only had partial control. We were driving right past people's front doors, and we had the cooperation of all of the very nice people from Morocco.
Do you see all the people in the windows? It's so beautiful. I mean, people are everywhere. It's like everyone is involved in this film.
We were designing the sequence and got as far as doing a previs of this whole chase when I realized this scene would be a whole lot more interesting if Tom was chasing Ilsa and not the villain.
Rebecca rocked it. She came in here, she was shredding the canyon. She's really into this sequence, which helps us. I mean, she comes very enthusiastic. We have to beat her away from it at the end of the day. She just wants to keep going. May have created a new motorcycle rider here in the world. Ilsa creates the crash. She actually was ahead of him and pulls over and stops and standing in the middle of the road.
Having the car drive towards me, and what was it? Do you know how quick he was driving? 160 kilometers an hour?
Yep.
And then breaking off just like a meter away?
You've had, you know, a really magnificent 12 or 15 minutes of Mission Impossible set piece, and you're ready for the movie to kind of take a break and slow down.
And we talk about the A400 as a dangerous stunt. We talk about the underwater sequence as a very dangerous stunt. The driving in that sequence was incredibly precise and incredibly difficult.
It was fun. It was extreme. It was high velocity the entire time, and we loved it. We had a blast.
Would you like to watch a movie?
Oh, no, thank you.
Would you consider the cinema of the Caribbean?
Agent confirmed.
Morning, Mr. Hunt. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to face your fate. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
I love making these movies. After all these years, you know, we now have our 5th Mission Impossible.
The committee has shut us down. There is no more IMF. I've been ordered to bring everyone in.
No matter which Mission Impossible film you're watching, you're in for the ride of your life.
It's not just action, it's not just suspense. You have a lot of intrigue.
The fundamental idea is that it's a crazy adventure with some familiar and some new characters.
The Mission Impossible films have resonated so strongly for so long because they represent a very specific sort of wish fulfillment.
They somehow managed to make the things that we don't think possible, possible.
Having a successful franchise of films has its blessings and its challenges, and one is that each director wants to do his own version of that, you know, have his own fingerprints on that.
But every situation will be solved gracefully, with cool music, with gadgets, with brilliant actors. It's just exciting. It's a ride.
What makes Mission Impossible special is, of course, it's an action film. Of course, it's got scope and spectacle. But Mission, unlike any other movie, has as its own an expectation of misdirect, both plot and character.
One of the things that Tom decided early on was he wanted different directors to be doing each one. He wanted them to have their own kind of life. So while there is a kind of continuum of spy genre, which is a successful and sort of robust, long-lasting genre, the Mission Impossible series, each one has sort of had its own kind of focus.
What I realized when I sat down to actually work on the franchise, when I analyzed all the movies put together, in each and every instance, Ethan Hunt is able to do superhuman things, but he is not superhuman. He's always aided by technology. In Ghost Protocol, he's able to climb on the side of a building. He's able to become invisible. But in each and every one of those things, there's a very specific technological advantage that allows him to do it, that makes it feel like it's almost real and that anyone could do it.
We're constantly pushing the bar with storytelling, with characters, and definitely with the sequences.
Tom brings a real sense of humor to the role.
You actually said that out loud.
Mission accomplished!
There's little moments for those super Mission fans.
Ethan, we gotta go.
Now an emerging terror organization known as the Syndicate.
We are the Syndicate, Mr. Hunt.
One of my favorite ones, which real Mission Impossible fans of the series will get, is when Ethan phones Brandt at the beginning of the film. You see a switchboard operator and you hear Ethan say,
Western Europe unsecured.
and he goes designator, and Ethan goes
Bravo, Echo, 1-1.
and then Ethan gets through to Brandt and he says,
Go secure.
if you watch the first Mission Impossible film, when Ethan's team are killed and he gets on the phone, he says,
Central Europe unsecured.
and the guy on the end says,
Designator.
Bravo, Echo, 1-1.
Switching.
and then the guy picks up the phone and he goes,
Go secure.
Okay, go ahead.
but you're seeing the other side of the conversation in this film. And Chris has put a lot of thought into all those little details so that fans know we care about the other movies, and we are passionate about giving the people who know just little Easter eggs to discover along the way.
StatCom 7.
Central Europe unsecured.
Designator.
Bravo, Echo 1-1.
Connecting.
This is Brent. Go secure.
Okay, go ahead.
This is Ethan Hunt.
Request immediate extraction.
What happened?
You know, when we do these films, there's no actual template that we have to follow. I mean, the fun of making these movies with Tom is that he goes to the directors and he says, you can do anything you want. Let's just try and have a heist in the movie. We're constantly trying to push ourselves and do some things that were different. In this case, we started talking about the underwater sequence.
It really does feel like what I know Chris McQuarrie wanted to do, which is sort of have it be a little bit of a greatest hits version of Mission Impossible.
There will always be bad guys out there. 20 years later and we're still out there saving the world. That has to be evidence that this story has still got a lot to give.
What I hope to do with movies, and I think even from the beginning, since I was a kid, 18, I remember thinking I hope to have a film and to make movies so that they could be watched, you know, not just opening weekend, but something that can be looked at 5 years, 10 years, and still an audience, you know, if I've done my job right, it still communicates to them and they're still entertained by it.
The idea of having two antagonists in the story came very early on when we decided that we didn't want to have an internal rift inside the IMF. I wanted to create a greater outside pressure.
All right, everybody, heads up. This is it.
Which is where the CIA and Alec Baldwin's character come in.
My character, Alan Hunley, is the director of the CIA, and I want to shutter, if you will, the IMF and shut them down.
The so-called Impossible Mission Force is not just a rogue organization. It is an outdated one, a throwback to an era without transparency and without oversight.
I thought it would be fun if somebody at some point in this franchise had taken into account all the things the IMF had done and said, why do we still let these people run around and do this stuff? They leave nothing but destruction in their wake. And it made for a very fun scene.
Here is the Kremlin before, and the Kremlin after.
My character spends a lot of time working on Brad in this kind of Melvillian way where my character's going around going, where is Hunt, where is Hunt, where is Hunt?
I'm going to find him, Brad, and when I do, he will be called upon to answer for every wanton act of mayhem he is responsible for.
I just get so excited about seeing what is Alec going to do with this character. And, you know, he certainly doesn't disappoint.
When I first suggested him to Tom, Tom said, without a doubt, Alec is great. I can't imagine anybody else in that role.
Alec is enormously entertaining in playing this antagonist and a definite threat and pressure down on the IMF and the team.
The Special Activities Division will now have full discretion.
You mean shoot to kill?
Whether Hunt lives or dies is entirely up to him.
We knew that the film needed its central villain, and I wanted someone who presented something more of a physical threat to Ethan than I had ever seen before. And Sean presented that in a really unique way.
Sean Harris owned the character. He owned the sociopathic nature of Lane, completely made you believe in everything that he was trying to do with Ethan.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it,
half torture, half seduce. So it's been just great watching him work.
Now say the words, please.
I accept.
Yes.
It was incredibly menacing, incredibly intimidating, but also at the same time, very soft-spoken. And the danger that comes from Sean is not what he's overtly doing, but the fear of what it is he's going to do.
I'm a bit scared of Sean Harris, really. Scared in a very respectful way. Every scene I've had with him, God, I've been lucky to have the scenes that I have, is unexpected. I never know what will come, what he will do. I can sometimes react of my own emotions with him. I'll get scared when I do scenes with him. I'll be very nervous.
I'm interested to see who you blame for what happens next.
This bad guy is really challenging Ethan in a way, really going sort of toe-to-toe with him. It's very much a guy who sort of met his match.
I don't know who he is, where he's from, how he's funded, but I know he's the key. You see right from the beginning, he's constantly eluding Ethan, and Ethan just can't grasp him. And this villain is manipulating Ethan, and he's really controlling the whole journey.
Solomon Lane was ahead of everything. Where Ethan was going to be, where his team was going to be, how they were going to react. Multiple steps ahead of our protagonist in this chess match.
Human nature, my weapon of choice.
From the moment I killed the young lady in the record shop, I knew you would
Stop at nothing to catch me.
By the end of the movie, Ethan has basically given the villain the tools to succeed in his plan of destroying the world's different intelligence agencies.
Why would Lane want it if he can't open it?
If Lane wants it, you can bet that he has a plan to open it. And we just helped him steal it.
The character of Atlee didn't exist until we put two action scenes together, the Taurus and the motorcycle chase. Ilsa was seemingly with Ethan in one sequence and suddenly against him, and what would make her character make that turn? We needed Atlee as the reason why she did it.
It's a ledger, the syndicate's entire infrastructure, who they are, the politicians they control, and where the money comes from. It's everything you want to know. Simon has sort of a little sparkle in his eye, which is such a good combination of the character that he's playing, which is the capo di tutto capi in the British intelligence.
Precious few people know about your true identity. It would be unfortunate if we forgot.
It was one of those things where we cast him, he shows up on the Albert Embankment for his first day of work, and suddenly this major character in the back half of our movie comes to life.
We know you created the syndicate, but Lane went rogue and turned it against you, didn't he? And you've been desperately trying to cover it up. It is classic Mission. It's teams under pressure and dealing with bureaucracy and dealing with pure evil. The film has very surprising twists and turns. Who do you trust and who do you not trust? Hunt. It is very classic Mission Impossible. I feel very fortunate to be able to do what I do and work with the people that I work with and try to hire the best people and work together with them, let them do their jobs, and you just know you're going to get something. And we have it on Mission movies. Truly amazing crews, and so many times like right at the 12th hour where I need something and we haven't figured out, you've got someone that just is right there. Everyone pitches in, and it's a very satisfying, very challenging, but very satisfying experience.
The great thing about being in the art department is we get to dream up worlds. Whether we are in a contemporary film like this, we still are creating things that don't really exist.
Part of my process is to make sure that as we set on the imagery, I keep that in my head, and I also keep it on a big bulletin board. As one full wall of my office is nothing but images that are near completion, so that I can detect a shape language and a color language that we're using. Because oddly enough, this all sort of emerges out of everybody's subconscious, and it comes to a point where you see what we're really saying.
What's great about Jim is how in tune with story he is. He's very, very much involved in the development of the screenplay, and at all times is asking deeper questions about the characters, which inform how he designs sets and how those sets are decorated.
I'm always impressed by production design, and when you walk into a set that just seems so complete and so 3D and real. There's some fantastic stuff. We're working today with a set of stairs which descends into a sort of safe house, and it's all there on the set, and it's been a really easy transition.
I just actually walked onto this set right now. It is spectacular in every single detail. I don't know how he manages to get the rawness and the roughness into every scene.
I have the privilege and the honor of working with a lot of really talented people.
We have a very talented team of concept artists, draftsmen and art directors. They all have their contribution to make to the process. Together, we can come up with things that maybe on your own you wouldn't think of. A conversation can go from a starting point to a very satisfying conclusion.
The art department was really on their toes on this film. The script was constantly being revised, and within 24 hours in some cases, you have to build that entire set from scratch.
We create the physical world, but that means nothing until it's photographed.
I've been a huge admirer of Robert's work for years.
He's such an artist, is Bob, and I've worked with him several times, and I'm always amazed actually when I watch movies. The amount of movies I've watched recently and his name has come up.
Elsewhere is, one of the greats. It really kind of psychs you up. It makes you feel good when you know you're out there with someone like that. It's really thrilling.
Robert can make anything look good, and I am truly grateful for that.
He lights the scene with empathy. It's sometimes you can feel a bit like an object as an actor with a DP who's just lighting you as a thing on set, next to a table. Bob kind of has an understanding of story and of the whole process, which is important because it makes the whole interaction much more fun.
We're not going to use those shot at your end, so stop it, okay?
He has an incredibly incisive eye in terms of how to cover a scene in the simplest way imaginable. He would watch Tom and I work together, he would watch the two of us discuss story or craft a scene, and then he would step in at a key moment and ask a specific question that would upend everything that we had been working on.
He comes from that school of Conrad Hall, Owen Roizman, that kind of classic storytelling, but has enormous range also. Here's a guy who can shoot something like the Opera House and yet bring wonderful drama to intimate moments, like the Safe House, and to have that kind of range. I think he's a great collaborator and someone I look forward to working with many, many movies.
By the end of the film, he had sort of broken me out of a more conservative style of filmmaking.
And I like Bob when he smokes his pipe. I think every DP should smoke a pipe. It just looks right.
Joanna Johnston is an extraordinary costume designer. This is my second film with her. And Joanna's attention to detail is without parallel. Her sense of texture, her sense of place, her sense of proportion, and how she approaches the development of character through costume is extraordinary. A very good example of Joanna's work on the film is the yellow dress.
I love that dress because not only the color, it's just so elegant and sexy.
It may seem like the simplest of things to have dressed Rebecca, but we had to look both at the action of the sequence and also at the aesthetics of the sequence and have the dress come together and serve both. Joanna was there from the very beginning, just watching how Rebecca moved and how she functioned with the rifle. And of course, the dress had to be ready for all of the stunt work that she was doing. So there were a dozen of these dresses. There was a dress for the rooftop, there was a dress for the harness she was wearing when she descended down the side of the building, and each dress had its own special function. Joanna had to design all of those from scratch, and they made all of those dresses by hand.
The way that she dresses each character, she comes from a point of view of character and knows how to dress actors in a way that is glamorous but not overstated.
There are certain shirts that Tom wears over the course of the movie, specifically the Morocco Safe House, that I just think are wonderfully tailored and wonderfully produced.
It's always nice to work with people on the crew who have a complete understanding of the story and your character as well, because often you'll walk into a costume fitting with your own ideas. I prefer to just walk in and say, whatever, dude, because that's your job.
I'd like to think it doesn't make a difference. I'd like to think that whatever clothes you put on me, I'm gonna get the job done. But it really does make a difference, I think, the clothes you wear. You just feel a little different.
The crew was amazing. Jim Bissell, Joanna Johnson, Robert Elswit, just all the department heads. Everybody was really challenged throughout on this movie, and they all rose to the occasion.
We needed the shot, we needed the sets, we needed the wardrobe, we needed the lights. This crew is extraordinary, and I just want you to know thank you so much. I can't wait to finish the film and have you all see it, and I truly appreciate it, and I'll miss you all. Thank you. I've always wanted to make films all over the world and work with foreign casts and mixed crews on this kind of project. And it is a romantic kind of genre. You see even from the first mission how Brian De Palma shot Prague and the Charles Bridge. It was beautiful, and eerie. So when audiences see it, I want to transport them. I want to bring them to these places.
It was very important to me that each one of the international locations we went to was not lost behind all of the action. I really wanted to make this for an international audience, and I wanted to bring you to places that you might not otherwise be able to go to.
It's thinking, okay, what haven't we seen before? And not just that, but also what does the story need?
With a mission, it's like finding the architecture that will give us story. You want drama? Go to the opera.
I was in France and went to the opera there and was suddenly struck by this beautiful building and thought, someone should shoot an action sequence in here. And that inspired the opera sequence. I had a real interest in Vienna very early on. And so we went to Vienna to see if the opera house there was at all suitable for what we wanted to do. And it was walking around the opera house, which was very different from the opera house that had inspired the sequence, that we realized that it was perfect.
Where in the world has a really fantastic opera house? And not just interiors, but exteriors as well. Even when you have a fantastic classical exterior, there aren't many of them that you can get the camera very far back from to really get the scale. But Vienna has wide boulevards. It lends itself to the scope and scale of filmmaking that Chris McQuarrie was really after.
You know, I've been to Vienna many times, and it's just beautiful. It's very elegant in the detail and scale. To me, it has a romantic quality about it.
Just shooting in the opera house, having the access that we did to the Vienna Opera House was extraordinary because we got to see some of the behind-the-scenes stuff of this incredible building and this incredible architecture and art in there. My green room at one point was this extraordinary sort of golden room. It was just absurdly beautiful.
The city is incredible. Jumping off the Vienna rooftop, that's very memorable.
To get that access to the roof, the Vienna Film Commission, everyone were like unbelievably helpful.
Where's it located? Morocco.
Morocco.
With Morocco, it was a bit tougher because we had very specific action sequences. So the locations not only had to be controllable, they also had to fit the flow of action. We had to be able to close off highways. We had to have good mountain passes with good vistas beyond. You know the kind of thing you're looking for, you just have to find it.
Once we determined that we were going there, it became very important to me that we find the beauty of that location.
Morocco gave us a great contrast to the look of Vienna. We were looking for a vastness and a large scope that sort of rivaled Lawrence of Arabia, to just open up the movie to this vast countryside.
We had never taken the franchise to that part of the world before. So to shoot in those wide open spaces with those incredible vistas in one of the most beautiful countries in the world became just a natural choice that wasn't hard to make.
In our scouts, we were looking at Casablanca, we looked in Rabat, we looked in Marrakesh, and there were things that I liked about all of them and decided we're going to use all three. The staircase, for example, the Rabat steps. As soon as I saw that location, I knew exactly what I wanted to do there. And luckily, we were able to get all of those locations together.
So where are we going?
Well, Tom and I fell in love with London when we were shooting Edge of Tomorrow here with Doug Liman. So it was no question that we wanted to come back.
I love that feeling in London that you get, that look. It holds a magic for me personally, and I think for McHugh too.
Locations immediately became self-evident. Blenheim Palace, the Albert Embankment where you can see Parliament in the background, the Tower of London where we shot our climax. We really wanted to hit those big landmarks and kind of make a love letter to London.
I wanted fog, and I wanted the cobblestone streets, and also to be right there by the Tower of London and the castle in the background.
We did a street chase through London. Middle Temple and Inner Temple were picked because what they give us is a very good London street vibe, but they're private. So we can come in, we can lock them down, and we can, you know, get lots of flexibility about what we want to do.
I feel like we should be whispering because we're in the Temple Church. It's incredibly beautiful.
Being out at night in London with all of that fog and having control of the streets was just really liberating and a lot of fun. There were really wonderful experiences we had in each and every place. I think more than anything is just at every location the thing that I appreciate the most is the people and how accepting of us they were, how tolerant of us they were, how friendly and open everywhere we went.
I mean, we are mixing culture, countries, people. I think that's why it works.
We build sequences within cities and celebrate their architecture and their beauty, the aesthetics of their culture. That's part of what Mission Impossible is. It is a journey that celebrates locations. That opera sequence is a signature sequence in the movie.
It was written in the 1920s, and the composer Puccini actually passed away before he finished the opera. And at its world premiere, Toscanini conducted it, and they reached the point where Puccini had passed away, and he put the baton down and said that is all he has written. Probably the most famous piece of music in it is the aria Nessun Dorma. It's a romantic, sweeping opera for male tenor. Just so happens that that's also the high point of the scene dramatically. I came out to London to prepare for this very musically involved sequence involving an opera. We decided to perform it to the recording that was Chris's favorite. Once we had wrapped filming and we began editing, we figured out which exact pieces would need to be featured in the film.
In part of our obsession with detail, we wanted to have the authentic orchestra from Vienna, and we also wanted to have very authentic opera singers. And so everyone that performed came to us from Vienna.
It's always awesome to hear, Mozart in Vienna. So that was great. And just finally getting to hear the opera the way it's going to sound in the film. We could use the Vienna Opera House musicians, but we couldn't use their space. So we went to the Golden Hall in Vienna. Mahler conducted his pieces there, Brahms, this is a fantastic acoustical space with a rich history of the greats.
It's this absolutely beautiful music hall, which is one of the very best, if not the best, acoustic rooms in the entire world.
Most opera orchestras are used to performing together. If it's for a recording, they may do it in segments in terms of 8 measures here, an aria, They may break it up for editorial purposes, but they still perform all as a group. This is a bit different because of the needs we have to mix it. We did the orchestra this morning and this afternoon, and then tonight, tomorrow, we'll do the soloists and the choir separately so that we have control over the placement of those elements. The room's got a fantastic sound to it, a great reverb. When a piece would end and it would come to that wonderful climax, there'd be that ring out. It was the most beautiful reverb you've ever heard, and it was all real. There was no computer reverb being added to it to enhance it. It's fantastic.
The opera sounds mouth-wateringly good. It's state-of-the-art recording, the very latest, highest quality we can do with the best musicians in the world, in one of the best sounding rooms in the world, with the best singers in the world.
They've had mics up in the gods, so they've got high recordings. It could be above you, it could be in the back, but with a low-end resonance. You're in the opera house, and no matter what location you may be, you'll get a sense that the opera is always playing. Music hasn't been used in that way before on a kind of mix like this. Not to the scale.
What they're doing with the opera sequence, I think is really exceptional. He's putting his own touches in there. He has designed the music to fit beautifully with the edit.
You're listening to about as authentic a sound of Vienna as you could possibly experience. What makes these films so unique and so extraordinary is how much of it is truly real. I think the audience knows when they're watching something real versus when they're watching something on green screen, no matter how well done it is.
Primarily my goal on a day-to-day basis is to help the filmmakers understand how they can film things in camera. So avoiding work is what I'm trying to do.
It's really important in mission movies that we're not doing a lot of CGI. We don't have other stunt people do this. Those sequences, the way that they're shot, you need that actor to do it.
We're able to put you right in the action through the point of view of the main character because Tom Cruise is there doing all of that action.
This film has no visual effects. That's the idea. We do everything we can to allow Tom and Chris to film everything for real.
They're a wonderful challenge to make and to kind of invite filmmakers and artists to come in and create this kind of world and do very practical kind of action. We're kind of tipping our hat to an analog filmmaking.
This is the scaffold gun. Our leading character comes in and starts to look around and has to find a sniper rifle. And so she selects this piece of scaffolding, she pulls it apart, it reveals the weapon. It's quite a pretty little rifle, semi-automatic, and it's built off an M1 carbine, a weapon that was used in the Second World War. So Chris wanted for one of the other assassins, he wanted a weapon disguised as a musical instrument. There is the cleaning rod, and that goes into the back here and becomes a stock. It opens, that's where you would chamber the rifle. So you place your round in there, you lock it, and then that's the position.
All the props that go on the set make it feel real and very, very pertinent to the story that we're telling. Those things make a space come alive.
Personally playing Benji, I love all the gadgets and stuff. I love walking onto set and seeing the kind of weird gizmos that either that have been meticulously constructed and are brilliant sort of practical props, or like the other day we had to figure out a way to open a door and someone just gave me a washer and said there's a computer in that, and that works just as well.
We've programmed a motherboard that's within the machine to actually do those three maneuvers. The whole machine is completely scratch built and a long time and a lot of heartache, but hopefully it's worth it.
There's something that has nothing to do with how it looks that is, I think, critical to an audience's experience. It's simply the reality and authenticity of it. It's not, can it be made to look good, because we all know it can, but for me, you want to capture the moment with a camera when it's happening.
We have a sequence in which Benji puts the mask on and becomes someone else, something that he's aspired to do since the last movie.
Well, that's easy. We just impersonate the agent who stole the ledger in the first place, and I get to wear a mask.
I had seen it done in other movies and seen it done quite well. I wanted to do it in a way that was completely different. And to me, the only way that became evident was to do it all in camera, without the use of visual effects. That, of course, presented its own special challenges.
This effect is often relies on CG. So how can you do a mask-off shot practically and do it in camera and don't touch it?
When we were standing on set and deciding how we were going to do it, I suddenly had the idea of doing the entire sequence in a mirror and building a false set that would allow us to have each actor sitting on either side of that mirror, pantomiming one another so that the whole thing could be captured in camera without the use of any special effects whatsoever.
It was a fun shot because A, it took a bit of planning, B, we had to actually act it out, but it's a visual effect that's in camera. It's still a visual effect, yeah? It's kind of old school smoke and mirrors. How would Hitchcock have done this if he could have done it before computers were available?
It's not CGI, and I still get asked.
The wall between the two, the hero room and the mirrored room, we just had a hole cut where the mirror goes. We put the surround, a mirror frame up on the wall, and then made sure that all the dressing on both sides was the same but mirrored. Even 60 books in there all had their spines reversed, so that in the mirrored set, if we ever catch it, you'll see that actually it looks like the reflection in a mirror. And the final piece that really sold it was putting a double of the edge of the mirror frame on the back side, spaced slightly, and immediately that one detail totally sold the set.
And action!
When we were shooting it, I became quite confused because I was looking at it on the monitor. I had to be outside of the room. The body double was pulling on Simon's mask too hard. And I kept directing Tom and saying, Tom, you're pulling on the mask too hard. He said, I'm pulling on it too hard? I said, yes, you're pulling on it too hard. And Simon turned and looked at me and he said, you realize Tom's over there and not over here. And I thought, well, I guess this gag is going to work because it fooled me.
The disadvantage of having visual effects is there's oftentimes a sterility to what you're seeing because there isn't the authentic sort of messiness of what is real. And so I think that when you can film a thing in a real space with real actors, do it.
The process on the floor, for me, that is my favorite. It's that excitement of it's happening, you know, and it's right there in front of us. When you look backstage at those opera houses, what I think was captivating to us and interesting are those rafters and how big the backstage is.
It was important that we be able to stage a fight that felt like you were walking on a knife edge.
So first thing you go for are what are the images that are going to really help sell the jeopardy that the protagonist is in. So we developed some initial images of Ethan on the lighting gantries and then went from there. All the machinery that goes on backstage is something that sort of gave us many levels and dimensions to work on, and also created some really wonderful perilous positions for Ethan to be in, because the back of the Vienna Opera is 90 feet in the air.
We were shooting the entirety of the Vienna Opera House, so from the audience, then to backstage, and to that height, and it was beautiful shooting back down as this opera is going on.
The Vienna Opera is a very busy building, and there are only limited windows of opportunity for shooting in there. That didn't include any room for a complicated stunt sequence.
We went to a facility called LH2 in London.
And we created all of the backstage at the Vienna Opera on that stage.
Everything you see in that backstage area is something that we've built from scratch. With the sets, we knew that they were going to be seen as much from behind as in front. So creating that sense of reality, putting the stencils, the marks that would really be on a Viennese set, it's a small thing, but it really lifted it. We had 4-level back of the proscenium with ladders going up, basically a sort of a jungle gym for the stunts to play out on.
Hi, this is Rebecca Ferguson with a gun. It's a scaffold. I just take it out from a hidden place, and Bob's your uncle. I love this gun so much, I've actually asked to have it. They said you can have the rubber one. The rubber one? Tom Cruise, I don't want the rubber gun. I want the real gun.
Rather than just let someone fight, we have to develop what is that person's character.
I'm about to get my bottom smacked.
With Benji, he's always a little bit humorous and a little bit quirky, so we want to develop a fight style that suddenly he's not a martial art expert or something. It falls within his genre. He did 1 or 2 sessions and he just wanted more. He just really enjoyed it. Too much.
I've been punched in the face. I've got a sore arm. I scratched Robert's arm bicep with my cufflinks. I got hit in the nuts. It's been good fun.
Rebecca was a little afraid of heights.
Rebecca Ferguson with vertigo.
To work her up from being afraid of a 12-foot drop in our stunt rehearsal area, big sort of kudos to her for that. She really woke up to the world of Mission Impossible in a very fast way.
We really wanted to have the most amount of depth that we possibly could. We wanted the audience to feel that height and to experience the scope of the opera house itself.
Chris McQuarrie's angle was that sort of classic approach to a fight rather than just a fight. The guys are wearing, suits, and you want to create something classic, but you've also got to be careful not to be too classic because the audience wouldn't necessarily appreciate fights that were done 40, 50 years ago. They want something, current and dynamic. It's like shooting with animals, shooting with kids, shooting at height. We started trying to do the fight sort of more of a green screen environment on floor level, so it was more manageable for camera. And it just didn't give the characters that jeopardy of being up high. It didn't give anyone that sensation or that feeling. That therefore it wouldn't have really read in camera. So we decided to reverse engineer it and do it the hard way, it being Mission Impossible, and shoot 99% of it up top and only do a very little bit on the ground. And it just added to performance.
So we were 70 feet up. We're high on those rafters and we're fighting on those rafters.
Being able to use Wolfgang, one of my team, to actually play the character helped us a lot with the limited time we had.
We rehearse a lot so that actually everything what we're doing is kind of intuitive. It's always a great feeling. You cannot imagine how many things you can control in the air. It's not just jumping down and see where you end up. If Tom is kicking me, I have to turn and aim. You have to think about performing. The moment in the air is always nice. Medius was the best stunt coordinator in the world.
Did an amazing job. They fought 12 hours a day. They didn't hardly break. It was up high. It was all the heat rising in that stage. Yeah, it was great, and it should look beautiful as well, because it had that classic feel, that sort of opera feel, and the lighting that, you know, Robert Ellsworth did. It was a beautiful sequence.
This is far and away the most complicated sequence I've ever shot. I'm thrilled with it. It's really fantastic. My vision for the fight in the opera house is very close to what you're seeing in the finished film. It's probably the most complete sequence in terms of the way I imagined it to the way it ultimately turned out.
To get that kind of action, to us, it was very compelling. I think what Chris McQuarrie did with it was really stunning and enormously entertaining.
Tom and I had always wanted to shoot a foot chase from our very earliest collaborations together, particularly because we know they're pretty challenging to do. And because this movie was Mission Impossible, we kept thinking it's got to be bigger and bigger and bigger than the other action sequences that we've done. Wade Eastwood took it on his own to go out around the streets of London and scout locations. And he found all of these alleys and came to us and said, I think we could shoot a really cool foot chase here in this part of the city. And Tom and I looked at each other and said, who says it's got to be that big? If the story really works and the audience is really involved, does it really have to be this giant, spectacular thing?
To have a night sequence like that, it was really fun figuring out, scouting it, and finding those streets and creating the story.
And watch this. I'm coming this way, and I'm coming out. Which way do I go? I see the car.
Boom, boom, boom. The narrow alleys and the sharp corners and the sense that it was a maze. It was just a really great environment for building pressure on Tom and Rebecca.
Unless you have actually seen him run, you won't understand how bleeding fast he runs.
There's a scene where I take a guy through a window in an office, but the camera's staying with Ilsa, and you're kind of caught with her drama, and then as it goes out, you just see me go out the other window, and then there's a separation. You just see the whole movie turn on that point, and as the audience go, no, you missed her, you're going the wrong way. That's just one of my favorite things to find, and as you're scouting and you're finding architecture. It's not like we had the idea beforehand, it's just we looked at it and went, oh, here's where we knew that we had to separate the characters, and this is the kind of architecture that will give us that.
We've been running in all these beautiful little alleys and jumping cars and sliding over hoods, and then leading up to this knife fight where we are separated.
Tom's getting pretty beaten up at this stage towards the end of the movie. We're not sure sort of which direction it's going to go. We cut between that and Ilsa getting basically the shit kicked out of her by Vinter in this knife fight. We designed it in a way that she's assessing him. He's obviously a guy and he's bigger and stronger in this location. It gives us this feel that it's like a woman being threatened by this guy, and it's sort of a neighborhood you don't want to be in on your own as a woman. And that's the sort of feeling we want at the beginning of this. She starts going full Ilsa on us and defeats him.
And me kicking his ass is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
The challenge of the foot chase was, where did it all end? Where was it all going? And how did we end up resolving this conflict between Ethan and the villain? We really didn't know what it was going to be almost up until the day we shot it.
The moment that Lane and Ethan face off, Ethan trapped with our villain getting closer and closer to him, and you hear the footsteps and the breathing of the villain, and you're with Ethan and he's like, where do I go? Where do I go? Can I go there? Can I go there? And then the camera cranes up over the top and you realize that they're literally just 2 feet away from each other, but they can't see because there's some pallets in the way. He manages to smash through some glass and lure the villain down a hole. And again, you're playing with the audience there because you think that Ethan is out of options, but actually he's doing it all deliberately to lead our villain down this hole and trap him.
It's a scene that took us a long time to figure out to get just right. And it's the first time when all of the major players are together in the same room. They've all been trying to come together for the entire film, and we finally sort of arrived.
It is high action. Crazy exciting. Beautifully shot.
When you're shooting in London, and all the films that I've made here, I've never had the foggy London night on the cobblestones through these beautiful streets. It's a city that I love, and we wanted a love letter to London. I just think it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and it's beautiful to look at.
I always say that a film is written 3 times. It's written once on film, once on paper, and once in the editing room.
So to get the ledger, one of us needs to enter the Taurus, and change the security profile so that the other one can access the computer without being caught. That's the only way.
That's the only way.
The editor is the first person on the planet to see the film start to come together. Before I get involved, there is just footage, just shots, just dailies of close-ups and medium shots and wide shots of actors doing wonderful work. But until you start cutting the sequences, you don't have a movie to watch. Chris and I developed a good rapport, and he started to trust me very quickly.
He had this enormous enthusiasm. I think what was so great about Eddie was how excited he was to just to be a part of the movie.
We shared a lot of similar sensibilities to how we wanted the story told, how we wanted the camera to move. So occasionally, if he was busy, he would say, "Eddie, can you step onto set and help the guys set up this shot?" We are on the opera set, filming the big opera set piece. It's a very complex sequence. There's a lot of parallel stories going on, and we need to make sure we've got everything. So as soon as the shots come in from the video tap, I import them in here and I start cutting the scene. And that way, after our 10 days of filming, we know we've got everything.
The Vienna Opera House found its way into our story as the result of a decision to shoot a certain sort of action sequence.
It's quite a long sequence. It's 18 minutes or so. As Ethan discovers things, the audience is seeing it through his eyes. So they're putting the puzzle together as Ethan is putting the puzzle together.
Am I correct in assuming that is the Chancellor of Austria? Did you know he was going to be here?
No.
Right.
On these big movies, it's a key skill of the editor. It's very important that you are the first line of defense for the story in terms of getting the shots before they strike the set, before the actors are wrapped, before the props are sent back. You have to watch the footage and say straight away, we need this shot, we need this shot, we need this shot. And the production manager won't necessarily want to hear that because it's a headache for them, but it is crucial for the story, and if you don't get it, you're going to be coming back in 4 or 5 months and trying to get the cast back, and you're going to have to shoot it then.
The sort of challenge of shooting such a complex scene with 3 different story threads all happening concurrently, where we've got action taking place on the streets outside, in the auditorium, in front of house, backstage, in the trestles high above, just necessitated many, many different locations, many, many different days of filming.
They broke it down with the visual effects crew and the production designer and said, we can build this in London, we can do this with green screen. These are the things we really need to get here that we can't get anywhere else. And some of those include, you know, the shots on the stairway, shots on the roof, shots of the entire seating gallery in the opera hall.
All that stuff came in, and I was refining the scene as we went along and trying to make sure that all the parallel stories made sense and that the music of the opera worked and what was going on stage. I mean, it was a massive, massive jigsaw puzzle. We thought the film was coming out in December, and then in about February, we discovered it was coming out in July. So we had 5 or 6 months taken off our post-production schedule, which was quite daunting.
David Vickery, who is in charge of our visual effects on this movie, has done a Herculean job.
When we came back to London, we rebuilt the whole stage and a couple of the boxes in the side of the auditorium. But then there are also other sections of the story which have Benji in the lighting booth, which sees the auditorium and the stage, and the trestles. So there are sort of 5 or 6 different pieces of elements that we need to film for every single camera that goes inside that. So you can see why we spent weeks and weeks filming it in many different spaces.
I think there are always massive challenges with these films. You know, the opera sequence seemed like almost insurmountable at points.
What I love about working with Eddie is his incredible attention to detail and his relentless refusal to compromise, which enables me to sit back from time to time and be the good guy.
Chris and I worked on it intensely, and I mean literally shot by shot. We'd go through, we would find out how to make the fight exciting and how to make the comedy work of Benji causing the lifts to go up and down, and all that timing, you know, to try and make sure the audience understood the cause and effect of that. You just put one foot in front of the other, you slowly climb up the mountain, and slowly you get a better and better view of the sequence, and you can work on it and you work on it.
Chris has got a really specific ear for sound. He's got a real passion for it, as does Eddie Hamilton, the editor.
We want to be able to mix the film in surround sound and place the opera correctly within the sound field based on where the action is taking place. If we're up in the rafters, we want the opera to sound distant. If we're right down on stage, we want it to sound like it's all around you. If we're back in the lighting booth, we want it to sound a little bit muffled or like it's coming through speakers.
Ethan, do you copy?
The direction of that piece and the detail and the amount of things that are going on mixed with this beautiful music, to me it's just delightful, and it's just enormously entertaining and very elegant.
And eventually you get the scene that you see in the film that just seems to work. And everyone's like, well, it was fine, it works, it's great. But you know, it's been many hours of really hard work, slowly figuring it out and refining it and refining it and refining it.
We were shooting it on day 1, and we were shooting it on day 117.
We're doing this on pretty much almost the last day of the shoot because this stuff was shot about a month ago, so we've been through it, we know what we need. We can go in and get some really nice close-ups to help the scene.
We'll be working on this movie until literally 10 days before it comes out in theaters, you know, and we'll be asking ourselves, can it be better? Can it be more exciting? Can it be funnier? Can it be a better experience for the audience? You know, that's what we care about.
Eddie's just great at really driving the crew, but at the same time really keeping up morale, and he's been invaluable to me.
Get in! Go, go, go!
When I look at a scene like that and I see it cut together the way it has, I feel very proud, not just of myself, I feel for us. It epitomizes what movie making is to me. Bum, 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 bum.
Bum, 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 bum. Bum, bum, bum. Dun, dun, dun.
You can't go, It's got da. You gotta go da, da.
Dun, 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 dun.
Bum, bum,
bum, bum, bum, bum.
Bum, 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 bum.
Oh, yeah.
Dinner.
It's on my ringtone.
You have to love Lalo Schifrin's theme song.
It's one of the best themes of all time. Lalo Schifrin. Genius.
I remember even as a kid, when you heard it, it gives you that feeling. I love that when a piece of music does that, and it inspires storytelling, and it's been fun in every single one to have the conversations with the composers. I invite their storytelling, like, what do you like about these kinds of movies, and what tone do you want to bring to it?
You know, I met Tom, and pretty much the first thing he said to me after I was hired on the film was, I want retro. That's been in the forefront of my mind for pretty much the entire process of working on the score for this film, to sort of honor what Lalo Schifrin did for the TV show. I thought, I'll just go back to the source and use that as my point of departure. There are certain film franchises where the theme music, you just sort of understand that it's going to play at a certain time in a certain way. We'd have some sort of cold opening sequence, and that would in some way trigger the most tried and true presentation of Lalo Schifrin's original theme for Mission Impossible. Then in the body of the film, I felt like I had earned the right by paying that homage to play with it, twist it around, invert it. There's a moment where Simon reveals that they're gonna have to go to Morocco.
Where's it located? Morocco. Morocco.
What I did was I teased the audience with the intro to Mission Impossible with that triangle and the flute trilling, and then go into a Middle Eastern arrangement of the plot theme. I like to approach scores based as much on character as I can. So I do like to construct themes for characters, and then if the character's on the screen, you hear their theme. There's an action theme, and it ended up sort of being the theme for Ilsa and Ethan whenever they're doing something action-oriented together. So when they go through the fight in the dungeon, the subterranean chamber at the opening of the film, when they're running across the rooftop of the opera house in Vienna, it's a fast piece, it's in an odd signature of 7/8, and that gives it sort of this off-balance feel, but it also gives us this really great drive. Pretty much anything you put over Simon Pegg's performance was automatically lightened a degree or two.
Is it that time already? Okay.
You had to tread this line with him because you didn't want it to feel like you're making fun of it or goofing on it. But you didn't want to then, when you cut away from him, have music that was so heavy and so serious that it felt herky-jerky or schizophrenic. The plot theme that Lalo Schifrin had created for the show, for me, became Benji's theme in the film.
By the way, the plot, which is one of his other themes in it, is almost as good, which is one of the great. If you don't have it, you should download it.
And this is a more sort of military theme. It's got drums, snare drums, and cymbals, but it's also got a sort of slightly quirky quality. And then I've written a theme for Sean Harris's character. It's almost serpentine in the way that the theme snakes around. It's in a bassoon, and it whittles its way through. In a way, that's my favorite theme that I've come up with for the film because it really captures the mysterious and sort of ethereal quality that Solomon Lane has. He's sort of a presence in the film even when he's not on screen because they're constantly talking about the Syndicate and Lane, and that theme proved to be a very useful tool to be able to reference him and keep him alive even when he wasn't on screen. The characters should be in the audience's mind. They're there in the DNA of the score.
I was coming through customs and I didn't have a correct visa because my application was late, so I had to go and do a second interview with the guys at immigration there, and I sat thinking, oh, I hope they recognize me, maybe they're like Mission Impossible or something and they'll give me an easy ride. But they were really, really strict, as they should be, and kind of took my documentation, went away, and I was sat there. And just from the other office, the biggest, burliest of the immigration guards, I just heard him go, "Doodaloo, doodaloo," and I thought, I'm safe.